Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to the new series which we are starting called as Day in Life of a XX. So what we are trying to do over here is invite our new some of the guests from Intuit and see how their lives looks like. Maybe it can be a software engineer, it can be a program manager, it can be a product manager, or a distinct architect or anyone else. So today's guest is Naga Subramaniam. He is a technical program manager at Intuit. So Naga, why don't you give us an introduction?
Hey, thanks for having me in this program. My name is Naga. I joined Intuit about 1.5 years back. I'm a principal technical program manager here. So I started my career as an engineer, and I was an engineer till a few years back. I was also part of a startup journey at some point in my career. So I was employee number one in a company. And then suddenly I joined another company where my employee number was like 6 digits. So I faced that shock, and then it took some time to get used to it. So yeah, then moved to the technical program manager role, and enjoying it.
Great. So let's start with the questions. So my first question is the basic one. What does your typical day looks like as a principal technical program manager?
I would split my day into two parts: the reactive stuff and the proactive stuff. So, reactive stuff pretty much looks like anybody else. For example, emails are there, the Slack notifications are there, the meetings are there. So, I read, reply, join meetings, and talk about various things and stuff like that. So, pretty much no big difference between any other role. But what the major difference with respect to the reactive stuff is from where all these are feeding. So because I'm a technical program manager, all these emails, messages, and all are related to the programs that I'm driving. So for example, some program might be in testing stage, some program might be in the requirement stage, anywhere, or some program might be launched already, and some data is coming in and stuff like that. So that is where the difference in what I react to is different from other roles. So that is one part. But with respect to the proactive stuff, so that is where the specific TPM activities come into picture. For example, as a practitioner of the program management itself, there are certain things that we foresee. When I say foresee, it's not a magic, but there are certain steps in running a program, and we know a program is in this stage and it is of this complexity. It is getting into this kind of a problem or no problem. Depending on that, we decide proactively, okay, this is what we should be doing now, and that fills some part of my daily time. So I can say the ratio is almost 60-40, more proactive and less reactive. But if you play it really well, you can improve that ratio further. It all depends on the individual.
Okay. So my next question is, as you mentioned, you have worked with multiple projects at a single point of time. So how do you collaborate with cross-functional teams and stakeholders to ensure successful program delivery?
Yeah, the key thing here is you can't manage what you don't know. So everything starts from knowing them. In the early parts of the program itself, we think about along with others. It's not a one man's job. So we discuss and say, okay, who are all the teams we have to work with? Who are all dependent on us? Who are all we are dependent on? And who are our stakeholders? What is their interest? For example, let's say we are working with a particular tech team for whom we are doing it. What do they want to achieve exactly? So then all your communication should be aligned to that. So that way we spend good amount of time early part of the program itself to know whom we should be working on. That is one part. We don't want surprises. Of course, surprises happen, but we want them to be minimal. So that is one part. Once we know who are all the people we are going to work with, then we agree on the mechanisms. For example, with some people I have one-on-one meetings. With some people it is email. With some people it is Slack. With some people it's a combination of things. I meet face to face with some people. It all depends on what sort of interaction it is and then how frequent it has to be. For example, there are some people whom I talk to almost on a daily basis. Some teams I will be almost on a daily basis conversation during development time, but when I go to testing or something, it reduces to weekly ones or something like that. So, but the point is always having that sense of, okay, there is a dependency, and this is the state of dependency. This is how well managed it is, and depending on that, you decide. You don't randomly decide I want to talk to this person every day. You decide based on the what drives that. Sometimes, for example, you would have heard about the war room situation. So if the building is on fire and then you need to get on a war room basis, sometimes we even meet twice a day. But that doesn't happen every day, and it's not scalable at all if it happens. So we keep those things very minimal. And the third most important point, working with cross-functional teams and stakeholders, is escalations are to be treated with respect. It's not like you raise the flag for everything. So there are so many things that you can do on your own between yourselves, and finding creative solutions to problems. Only when you escalate right, you will get the support from the people who are escalating to. So you would have heard the story about the boy who cried wolf. So if you keep on doing it frequently, the value for escalation goes away. So that's a trick. You should escalate, but not for every problem. As long as you do honest attempts to solve it at yourself and know when to escalate, it comes by practice. So that's the third part. Used very minimally, but when used, it's very effective.
Okay. So my next question is, as you mentioned, a program can have a lot of obstacles, or sometimes it might not have any. So how do you describe any challenges or obstacles which you typically encounter in your role, and how do you overcome them?
Yeah, so the main thing is when you're, especially on programs where you're working with multiple teams, aligning priorities can be a big challenge. When I say aligning priorities, something which is very important to me may not be important to one of the teams I work with. Okay, let's say I work with 10 teams in a particular program. I'm able to align with 9 teams, but one team doesn't have the right priorities. Of course, they have their own priorities, and this doesn't fit in that scheme of things. So that is one major challenge that we need to address. It happens. I mean, same it can happen in reverse also. Somebody might come to me for support, and it may not be my priority. So in that case, so it's a back and forth conversation that we go through. So that is where what we try to do is, once again, escalation is not the solution. So what we do is we think about, okay, both of us are solving for Intuit customers. End of the day, nobody is doing any personal work here. We are all trying to solve the customer problem. So the question boils down to which problem is more important. It could be solved in multiple ways. For example, accommodating one more request could be possible by them, or we can swap something else which was in the priority can be swapped with the new priority that we are bringing in. But all that can happen only when you are in the discussion table and you are actually actively debating, okay, what is the right thing for the customer. So when you keep that as your north star and then have your conversations, that goes smoothly. That's how I solve this challenge. Another important thing is relationships are very important. So it can't be like you randomly just go to a person and expect he or she to make or accommodate to your request, right? So that is where it's very important to continuously have engaging conversations with them. For example, in the beginning of a year or beginning of a quarter, talk to them, understand what are their priorities, and give them enough notice. That is very important. If everything is a last minute request, again, it loses the importance. So for example, let's say you need something from somebody in October. So can you give a heads up in August itself saying that, hey, guess what, I want you to do this only in October. Is it possible? First of all, some dip testing. They say, yeah, possible, not possible, some sort of conversation happens. If they say possible, fine, I'll come back and remind you, kind of a thing. If they say not possible, discussing it now gives you more runway to solve the problem before October. You don't want to start that conversation on September 30th and then get into immediate red flag mode. So that is relationship, maintaining relationship, respecting their time and giving them enough time. And another third thing that I try to do is, when I go to people with the ask, I try to simplify the question as much as possible. Not that I don't trust their intelligence. They're busy. Everyone is busy. They have so many things in their plate. So instead of giving them a long-winded question, if you can give an introduction and say, hey, guess what? These are the two things I want from you. The introduction can be short. He may say, Naga, I don't understand it. Explain to me. Then I can go into even 45 minutes of talk. But what is most important is what I want from them. So A, B. Can you do A? Can you do B? Sometimes everything gets closed in that meeting itself. Sometimes it gets extended, but you manage it as a conflict. So that is one. And another important challenge that I feel every technical program manager will be facing, and it's a day in day out problem, is communicating at the right level. For example, the same language I used to talk to an engineer, I cannot use with a director or a VP. Of course, they can understand, but the point is they expect a communication at a different level so that they can make decisions at that level. So you need to be able to switch between 30,000 feet and ground level very frequently, and you should know what level you should talk when talking to a person. This level has nothing to do with power or something. It's to do with how much they should understand. If they want a dive deep, they will ask, okay, give me more details.
Okay. So, how do you measure the success of your projects? What metrics or indicators do you use?
There are multiple metrics. One is obviously because we own delivery of programs, the on-time delivery of the feature with the right ABC requirements, whatever we agreed. Whatever we agreed, are we able to deliver on time with the best quality is obviously the number one mission. The second one is within the project, the ability to spot risks, how many risks you were able to identify early, how many you were able to mitigate. In fact, I would even go to the extent of how many you were able to mitigate without escalation. That can also be a metrics. These are all like personal metrics, right? So you do a postmortem of a program and you know, okay, this is what you could have done better. So that is one. And communicating right, like I was saying, are you talking to right people at the right level and you are able to. In fact, I would even go to the extreme of saying that one of the success metrics for a TPMS, when you're in a room and you say something and somebody else reinterprets it in different words and everyone gets it, that's a metric you don't want to have. So you don't want someone else to translate your updates. So as long as you are able to clearly communicate, understand the room, who are in the room, what they want to hear about your program, if you can take that part and give it in a very crisp and making sense to them kind of a manner, that is a very big success metrics. Of course, there are metrics like stakeholder feedback. For example, I work with product managers, I work with PD managers, I work with designers, I work with engineers. So they all can give feedback about how well the program was managed, how much I respected their time, and did they feel overburdened. If you introduce a process for everything and then they have to fill 10 different sheets every week for reporting the program status, again, these are all will reflect in your feedback. So yeah, those are all some of the metrics that I use. There can be many others, but this is what comes to my mind immediately.
So, this all sounds very exciting. Now, I want to know what skills should I have to become a technical program manager?
Okay, I think we covered it briefly while answering earlier questions, but I will summarize it with a few points. One is clarity in thinking, clarity in understanding, and communication. That is one number one skill. You cannot be a technical program manager without being clear about how you think. Basically, of course, there is a project plan, there is a document, there are slides and all, but your program should be sitting in your head. That can't happen without clarity. That is number one. And number two, relentless questioning. I would say it's a super skill for a technical program manager. If somebody says something and you don't understand, you don't say, okay, go back and then read something, you question them immediately. Don't think about stupid questions or silly questions or something. There is nothing like it. Till I understand, I'm not going to go to the next sentence. If you don't do that, very quickly you will lose track of what's happening. 4 or 5 sentences later you have already lost, just because you didn't ask that what is it, can you explain it to me 4 sentences back, you're suddenly lost, everything becomes unclear. So that way I think relentless questioning is something that I will say. Third one is the switching between 30,000 feet and ground level very frequently, and you should be able to do it even within a meeting. 2 minutes back you were talking 30,000 feet because you were answering a question from your director, and 2 minutes later engineer is raising some points, so you're asking, okay, can you tell me about this, then suddenly you're in the ground level. So you should be very comfortable switching between these two very frequently. Another key skill is being organized and process oriented. This is something very important. Uh, while I said everything sits in your brain, I do not trust my own brain, so I have processes for everything. For example, my to-do list, it could be the number of open issues in my program, it could be risk database. For example, if something comes out of this conversation which I need to work on, it will immediately go to my notebook, which is pen and paper notebook. And before end of the day, it will go to my to-do list in the system. And my to-do list has when it was raised, who raised it, how many days back, what is the priority of it, is it urgent or not, all the details, so that they are all helping me act on the right things. So being organized helps you that way. And another thing is a good balance of pessimism and optimism. So you have to be pessimistic when you're thinking about risks. What if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? But at the same time, you can't bring that conversation into your while doing things. When thinking about things, you should be probably focusing more on what can go wrong. And when you jump to doing things, you should be very optimistic and say, okay, let's get this done, kind of a thing. So you should have a good balance. If you're too pessimistic and keep on talking about things which can go wrong, people will start thinking, okay, whatever Naga says will not happen. Probably one in a million cases it'll happen. And if you are too optimistic, they'll say Naga is speaking like a self-improvement book author. It's not practical. It is not going to happen. So you need a good balance between these two.
Oh man, your life sounds very busy. So I want to know, how do you stay updated on the latest industry trends?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is I am a very serious reader. So I read books, I read articles, I read news, selective news. I must say this. I try to avoid certain negative trends which probably pull you in and then keep you there. So that I do regularly. Another thing that I do is I have a good friend circle who are all technical program managers who are passionate about learning. So we discuss very often. We do cross learning. So, for example, one of the programs where I faced a risk and managed it very well could be a learning for them, and vice versa. Of course, without sharing any sensitive information, we can still learn. It's end of the day, they are not interested in what programs I'm running, what features I'm launching. They are interested in what problems I faced and then how I solved it, which can be useful to them 2 years down the line or 5 years down the line. When you keep doing it, suddenly a database gets formed. As a famous quote says, you can't live to make all the mistakes yourself. You have to look at other people's mistakes and prepare a database for yourself. Okay, these are the possible ways things can go wrong. And when you sense something, you immediately say, okay, can I apply this tool to it? Can I apply that tool to it? So all those connections are happening. This can happen only when you continue your learning. And you can continue your learning only if your projects don't keep you very busy. If you are spending 60 hours a week on your projects, there is no time to learn, there is no time to read, there is no time to talk to people. So everything is connected, I feel. If you're well organized, you will have time. At least, I mean, I try to give at least 2 to 3 hours minimum per week for my learning, minimum. This is on top of my personal reading or anything. For example, when I go for a walk, I listen to audiobooks. So like that. So this is on top of that. So if you don't invest that, it's like sharpening the axe kind of a thing. If you don't do that, at some point you will see a blunt axe and you can't cut with it anymore.
So I would like to end this with one last question. So how do you foster a culture of innovation and continuous improvement within your team?
Two things. Number one, no single person is responsible for innovation anywhere. So just for example, a company may have a R&D division. That doesn't mean they are the only people who research and develop. It's everybody's job, and innovation can come from anywhere. Anybody, even a janitor, can come up with an innovative thing which helps the org. So that is number one. So nobody has to give you permission to innovate. Number two, this is more important. If things are done in a certain way and you feel there is a different way of doing things, minimally you should question. You may be shot down saying that no, what you are proposing will not work because of ABC reasons. But if you hesitate and don't ask that question, little later you will realize that why nobody raised this question. And we ourselves do that, right? When there is a problem and suddenly we think, why I didn't think about it 1 year back, kind of a thing. So you don't want that to happen. So that's the second thing. So everybody can innovate, and when you have a new idea, just be open and say it. That means its flip side is also true. When somebody is coming up with a new idea which probably is rubbish, silly, will not work, don't shoot the messenger. They are just coming up with a new idea and you have to give data on why it won't work. Many times you hear like, okay, you don't understand this, leave it. Don't do that to others. The moment you do to others, the culture itself changes. Other people in the room who are watching you know that, okay, this is not the place to give new things. This is a place where you go and follow. You don't question things. So the moment that comes, you will go in the downhill path only. So those are the things I feel are very important to come up with innovative stuff, being open and being vocal about what is the innovation that you want to bring.
Thanks, Naga. This session was really very wonderful. I got to learn a lot about the technical program manager. Any last words to our listeners?
Thanks. This is a very exciting series. It was really fun talking about what we do. In fact, I sat and started writing notes for this recording. That's when I realized, okay, there's so much going on. When you do something, when you are in the woods, you don't realize that it's a forest around you. You see trees, you see leaves, and that's where it stops. But when you take a step back and then look at what it is, it's definitely fascinating, and such self-analysis is something is very important. So I believe everyone who is participating, even the speakers, will get something from this series. Thanks and good luck with the remaining series.
Really, I'm a engineer and I daily talk with the technical program manager, not daily, like weekly, once or twice, and I see how much work goes in building one project. Yeah, thanks for your time and thanks to the listeners.